First picture here on the left, this original Daisy Duke from the Dukes of Hazzard. All right, and then on the right there is Jessica Simpson reviving the role in the movie that starred Johnny Knoxville.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So this is our modern day Potiphar's wife here, right? What? So here you come across this girl in the Daisy Duke shorts, and she's saying, "Come lie with me," right? And so, according to Joseph, what should we do?
Run.
You should run away.
No.
Yes.
No.
Run away.
I'm not gonna. But what if she's not married?
What does that have to do with anything?
You're not
No,
married. What if I'm
no.
21?
What does that have to do with
What if I'm
anything?
married?
That's
to
sex
her?
before marriage.
Well, that's totally different now, isn't
All
it?
right.
Well, then
That's
you
a
just
dream.
get married to her.
Why are you
But like when I'm
dreaming?
gonna.
What we want to talk
Have
about
many
here is
children.
we want to look at Joseph as an example. Right? Why did he avoid Potiphar's wife? Because she was asking him to have sex with her, with him, right? And he said, "No, I would not sin against God." So what does he do, Josh? He avoids. First, he avoids her. He tries not to get close to her, right? So think back, we talked about what if Adam and Eve, when they saw that dragon, what if they would have just ran away?
We'd all be saved.
Yeah, we wouldn't have the issues we have. Somebody else would have ended up sinning, but yeah, right?
Wasn't it-
So the issue is, don't engage. Don't put yourself in that near occasion where you might be tempted, right? Here, when he's confronted, there's no one else there, and that's what she was hoping would happen, right? You get the sense that she had the house cleared out, so when he would come, it'd just be the two of them. It'd be harder for him to say no, right? But again, what did he do? He showed his courage and he ran away. So when you think about it, there are two great examples here that Joseph is giving to us, right? So we can all agree, I think, rationally and intelligently, that recreational drugs are not good, right? We went through this whole thing yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
Don't go to the house where you know that the guys are going to sit around getting high all the time.
Come on, Joshua.
If you're going to go that and know that, avoid that. Don't put yourself in that position. Don't put yourself in a position where it's just you and a girl alone in a room.
No,
Right?
no.
If you look at most of the time, when we sin, there are a lot of things that lead us to that. If we would have avoided one of those little steps previous, we don't end up in that situation. Right? And again, our culture tells us, right, if some girl asks you to have sex with you, you're like, well, yeah, that's what men do. We have sex with women. That's right.
Gotta get married.
I'm Esau. I'm gonna, just operate on my passions, right? Not my intellect, not my image and likeness of God, not where I want to be relational, and not where I want to be giving, not where I want to be loving. Right? Our culture says it's about me and my self-gratification. Joseph, a great example here. Again, he avoids the women because it's a sin against God. And this doesn't even include the Ten Commandments, right? So it's a great lesson for us here on how Joseph interacts with this temptation of sin, right? He first avoids it, tries not to get close to it, so he's tempted. And then when he's confronted with it, he doesn't sit and engage. He just runs away, right? Now, when we would go through and talk about all the
Wait, what was that last?
Yeah, wait, can you go back?
This is where in a lot of the Middle Eastern countries, right? And so this again is quite different than our Daisy Duke shorts.
Dang.
But somebody was asking about, well, how would Jacob have not known who he was marrying, right? Well, if your dress would have been something like this, you might not have known who you were marrying.
I have a question.
Burqa.
Yes.
Shador.
For the burqa, wouldn't they just like run into walls and stuff if they couldn't?
No, you can
It's
you
see-through.
can see.
You have
Wow.
to shower with it on.
No.
Yeah.
You just can't really.
Yeah,
I know.
You just can't shower.
How do they wash it?
Also, that'd be so hard. Good question, they don't.
They can have more than one
What?
to get into the traditions.
I don't like a cooling system.
All right.
John, how can you sit like that?
Girls don't sweat, they sparkle.
So now, let's go back. So he runs out. Potiphar's wife accuses him of trying to rape her. And so then what happens to Joseph?
He's
thrown in jail. Right? So let's again take a look at what God is doing and how God is forming him. First, he's his father's favorite son, has his high position. Then he's humbled, right? and made a slave. Right? But by being open to God's plan, he rises up in Potiphar's household. Now he gets sent to jail. Now think about going to jail. This is, do you think our jail, our prison system is bad? Do you think there are any human rights concerns? No. Jail would be a terrible place. No rights, no anything. But now he's totally humbled, right? And he has to totally rely on God. And of course, what happens to him when he's in jail?
He can read the person.
Well, even before that, if you look at verse 21. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him kindness by making the chief jailer well disposed toward him. The chief jailer put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners in the jail. Everything that had to be done there, he was the one to do it. The chief jailer did not have to look after anything that was in Joseph's charge, since the Lord was with him and bringing success to whatever he was doing. So just like in Potiphar's house, right? Joseph humbles himself and God rewards him. And now he rises up and he's in charge of the prison, right?
Why was he humbled again if he didn't he resisted the temptation absolutely?
Why? So again, what is God? Is there anything wrong with strengthening your faith more? Wasn't Abraham multiple times tested? The more you're tested, the stronger you're going to get, right? Now, we're going to talk about Proverbs the other day, 17, iron sharpens iron. So again, what is God doing? He's transforming Joseph from a man of pride to one of humility and virtue. Again, because he does this, because Joseph is not relying on himself, he's putting his faith in God, God is rewarding him. And this is an idea for us, that we have to humble ourselves and be open to God's plan for us. Now, of course, what's involved in that is prayer. And we saw that prayer come through with Jacob, praying and listening to what is it that God has for us. So now, of course, the next story in Joseph is what? He interprets the dream. So we have the two guys from Pharaoh's court, the cupbearer and the baker. They get thrown in jail because they don't know, somebody has stole something from Pharaoh and they don't know which one. And they both have these dreams. And what does Joseph do? He interprets them. Everybody remember the interpretation of the dreams?
The cupbearer would be reassigned to his position, and the baker would be staked.
Right. And so the cupbearer is relieved, like I'm not the one. I'm going to be found innocent. And of course, that's what happens. And the baker is then executed. The cupbearer is brought back to Pharaoh. And Joseph reminds him, hey, if you remember me, remember what I did for you. I'm back here in jail, right? And so, how does the cupbearer remember Jason? Why does he have to remember Jacob? Joseph, sorry.
Pharaoh's dream.
All right. So Pharaoh has these troubling dreams, right? And no one can figure them out. And the cupbearer says, wait a minute, I remember this guy I did some time with, right? And he could do this dream stuff. So they call on Joseph, and Joseph interprets the dream. And what is the interpretation of the dream?
7 years of prosperity and 7 years of
Right. We talk about the cows eating and all that. So we are going to have 7 years of great harvest, followed by 7 years of famine. So what do they need to do then? All right, they can't when if things are good, we just can't continue. We need to save up to get us through those 7 bad years. All right. So because of this, then Joseph is elevated to what? Kind of like a prime minister role within the Pharaoh's court. So he becomes a very powerful person in Pharaoh's court. John?
So wait, so did the baker steal something? Or how are they both friends?
Because they didn't know for sure who it was.
So the baker stole something,
Yeah.
and the cupbearer didn't know.
Well, the cupbearer is saying I didn't do it, and the baker's saying he didn't do it, so they had to wait until the investigation.
Witnesses.
So now we have Joseph is in charge of basically running Egypt. So he went from running a house to running the prison. Now he's running Egypt, right? And this is where we get back to his brothers. All right, so let's turn in our Bibles to chapter 42. Now, where are Joseph and his brothers at? I mean, where are his brothers and his father? Where are they still at?
The house.
Ooh.
Where do they live at?
I don't know. So far.
Nope.
Israel.
Well, what was it
Canaan.
called then? Canaan, right? They're still living in Canaan. And so now we've had that 7 years of prosperity, and now we're looking at these 7 years of drought. So the drought has hit Canaan, and they are suffering and they need food. So Jacob sends his sons down to Egypt to get some grain, and loads them up with stuff to buy the grain with. Right? And so they come into Egypt and they run into Joseph. So if we take a look here, chapter 42, verse 8. When Joseph recognized his brothers, though they did not recognize him, he was reminded of the dreams he had had about them. He said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see the weak points of Israel." "No, my lord," they replied. "On the contrary, your servants have come to buy food." Right? "All of us are the sons of the same man. We are honest men. Your servants have never been spies." But he answered them, "You're not so. It is the weak points of the land that you have come to see. We are your servants," they said. "We are 12 brothers, sons of a certain man in Canaan. But the youngest one is at present with our father, and the other one is no more. It is just as I said, Joseph, as I said, you are spies. This is how you shall be tested. I swear by the life of Pharaoh that you shall not leave here unless your youngest brother comes here." Why would Joseph want the younger brother to come?
Because he's the younger brother.
Yeah, he doesn't even know he has this younger brother. Right? He's never met the younger brother. So send one of your number to get your brother while the rest of you stay here under arrest. Right? So what's he saying? You guys are going to stay here, go back and get your younger brother and come back. And this way you'll prove that you're not spies. Right? So really, what is Joseph setting up here? What's he trying to do?
He's tricking
He's tricking them for what? What's his goal here?
Reconcile.
Make fun of them.
All right, he's looking for reconciliation, but what do the brothers have to do before they can reconcile with Joseph?
Prove themselves.
They have to, prove themselves what? Why do they have to prove themselves?
Because they duped him.
Right, they did something wrong, right? They sold their youngest brother in slavery. So Joseph is trying to set up, how are they treating the other younger brother? Are they treating him the same way they treated me? And so this is kind of a test to see if the brothers have learned, right? Are they remorseful for what they did to Joseph? So now, the brothers, they agreed to one another. However, they said, "Truly we are being punished." This is down in, what is that, verse 21. "Truly we are being punished because of our brother. We saw the anguish of his hearts when he pleaded with us, yet we would not listen. That is why this anguish has now come upon us." So now they're starting to recognize this is our punishment that's coming back to us, right? So they go back home, right? One of them stays, they go back home, and does Jacob let him return?
Yeah.
No. He said, "No, I can't risk losing another one." Right? And so they stay a while, but the famine gets so bad that the sons finally convince them, "What good is it? We're all going to die here anyway. Send us back." Right? And so they send them back, and who goes with them this time?
The younger brother.
The youngest brother, which is who?
Simeon.
Benjamin. Right?
Get named.
So they take Benjamin with them. All right, so let's take a look here at chapter 43, verse 15. "So the men took those gifts and doubled the money and Benjamin. They made their way down to Egypt and presented themselves before Joseph. When Joseph saw them and Benjamin, he told his stewards, 'Take them into the house and have an animal slaughtered and prepared, for they are to dine with me at noon.' Doing as Joseph had ordered, the steward conducted them into Joseph's house. But they became apprehensive when they were led to his house. This must be, they thought, on account of the money put back in our bags the first time, that we are taken inside in order to attack us and take our donkeys and seize us as slaves. So they went up to Joseph's steward and talked to him at the entrance of the house. 'If you please, sir,' they said, 'we came down here once before to buy food. But when we arrived at night's encampment and opened our bags, there was each man's money in the mouth of his bag. Our money was the full amount.' So when Joseph sent them home, he didn't charge them for the grain. He gave them all their money back. The steward says, 'Come down, do not fear. Your God and God of your fathers must have put the treasure in your bags for you.'" Right? So then he brings them in, and you skip down to verse 27. This is Joseph now. "Joseph came home. They presented him with the gifts they had brought inside while they bowed down before him." Back to the dream that he had earlier as a boy, right? They bowed down before him to the ground. After inquiring how they were, he asked them, "And how is your aged father of whom you spoke? Is he still alive?" "Your servant, our father, is still alive and doing well." They said as he knelt and bowed down. Then Joseph looked up and saw Benjamin, his brother, the son of his mother. He asked, "Is this your youngest brother of whom you told me?" And he said to them, "May God be gracious to you, my son." With that, Joseph hurried out, for he was so overcome with affection for his brother that he was on the verge of tears. So he went to a private room and wept there. So here he is for the first time, right? He checks, is his father okay? But for the first time, he sees his brother, his real full brother from his mother and his father, right? And so he's overcome with joy at seeing his brother.
So, the brother was born of Rachel, not Leah?
The other brothers were from Rachel and maidservants. He was the only one from Rachel and then Benjamin.
Rachel and Benjamin?
Benjamin's the younger brother.
Benjamin.
No, I'm sorry. Rachel and Juliet. Benjamin's the son. From Rachel and
Okay.
Juliet.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
Oh. So now the final test. All right. Then Joseph commanded the stewards, fill the men's bags with as much food as they can carry, and put each man's money in the mouth of his bag. So just like the first time, he's going to send them back with all the grain, but he's not going to take their money. In the mouth of the youngest one's bag, put also my silver goblet, together with the money for his grain. The steward did as Joseph said. At daybreak, the men and their donkeys were set off. They had not gone far out of the city, where Joseph said to his steward, "Go at once after the men. When you overtake them, say to them, 'Why did you repay good with evil? Why did you steal my silver goblet? It is not the very one from which my master drinks and which he uses for divination. What have you done? What you have done is wrong.'" So what's he doing now? What's Joseph doing?
He's tricking him.
He's tricking them. He's put his silver goblet and he's planted it in their grain, and it's making out like they stole it. Right? So again, this is all part of Joseph's plan. All right, so when the steward overtook them, he repeated these repeated words to them. They said to him, "Why does the Lord say such things? Far be it from your servants to do such a thing. We even brought back to you from the land of Canaan the money that we found in the mouths of our bags. How can we steal silver or gold from your master's house? If any of your servants is found to have it, if any of your servants is found to have the goblet, you shall die." So if any of us here, if you find the goblet on us, we'll die, because we wouldn't have done that. Right? And for the rest of us, we should become my Lord's slave. But he replied, "Now, what you propose is fair enough, but only the one who is found to have it shall become my slave, and the rest of you can go free." Then each of them put the Lord his bag to the ground and opened it. And when the search was made, starting with the oldest and ending with the youngest, the goblet turned up in Benjamin's bag. At this they tore their garments. Then with each man had loaded his donkey again, they returned to the city. When Judah and his brothers entered Joseph's house, he was still there, so they flung themselves to the ground before him. "How could you do such a thing?" Joseph asked them. "Did you not know that such a man as I could discern by divination what happened?" Judah replied, "What can we say to my lord? How can we plead, or how can we try to prove our innocence? God has uncovered your servant's guilt. Here we are, then, the slaves of my lord. The rest of us no less than the one who possessed the goblet was found." Joseph said, "Far be it from me to act thus. Only the one whose possession of the goblet was found shall become my slave. The rest you may go back unharmed to your father." Judah then stepped up and said to him, "I beg you, my lord, let your servant appeal to my lord, that you do not become angry with your servant, for you are the equal of Pharaoh. My lord," asked the servant, have you a father or another brother?" So he said to the Lord, "We have an aged father and a younger brother, the child of his old age. This one's full brother is dead, and since he is only one by his mother who is left, his father is devoted to him. When you told your servants, bring him down." So they're telling him, "Hey, this guy Benjamin that you have, this silver cup, he's his father's favorite. You can't keep him. Take us instead. He has to go back to his father." So now this is what Joseph has been waiting for, right? Because now what are they willing to do?
He gave himself up for.
They're willing to offer themselves up for Benjamin the youngest, which they wouldn't do for him, right? In fact, they sold him, right? So this is the point that Joseph has been looking for. Have they repented? Have they recognized their wrong? And have they changed? Do they have a change of heart? How have they treated their younger brother? Right? So in chapter 45, Joseph could no longer restrain himself in the presence of all his attendants, so he cried out, "Have everyone draw for me." So no one attended him, but he made himself known to his brothers. But his sobs were so loud that the Egyptians heard him, so the news reached Pharaoh's house. "I am Joseph," he said to his brothers. "Is my father still alive?" But his brothers could give him no answer, so dumbfounded were they at him. "Come closer to me." Again, drawing people back, the idea of reconciliation. When they had done so, he said, I am your brother, Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. But now do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for having sold me here. It was really for the sake of saving lives that God sent me here ahead of you. So what is Joseph now understanding? Why is he telling his brothers not to be mad with him?
Because it was part of God's plan.
It's part of God's plan. If Joseph wasn't in Egypt and he was back in Canaan, what was going to happen to him?
They had to die.
They're going to die of famine. So here, again, what do we see God doing with evil?
Making
Turning it into something good. The evil act of his brothers selling him into slavery, God takes that and turns it into something good. Right? So, again, Joseph, here's our summary of the story. Joseph's brothers now have to face the guilt of their sin. They have to confront Joseph. Okay? Now, remember, he had them thrown in jail, just like he was thrown into the pit. And so now they're recognizing, they're starting to see the similarities here, that this is God's hand at work. And we see that Joseph still has his love of family. Even after all these hardships, he still wants to reconcile with his brothers. He's still seeking them out. So remember, he released 9 of the 10 and told them to bring back the youngest boy. They come back. He sends them back home, but he hides the silver cup in Benjamin's bag. Why Benjamin? He's the youngest. And so this is what he's setting up for the test. Will they sacrifice for Benjamin, or will they throw him under the bus? Right? And of course, Judah takes up the blame and offers himself up. Right? In a similar way, Jesus offers himself up on the cross. Was he guilty? Did he deserve to die on the cross? No. Whose blame does he take? It's all of ours. Right? So again, in some ways, you can look at this as kind of prefiguration of Jesus on the cross. So after the brothers have proven that they were truthful and that they were loyal to their younger brother, then Joseph reveals his identity. And now we see the reconciliation and forgiveness, because now what happens? Joseph brings his whole family back down to Egypt. So again, what has Joseph been doing? He's been trying to bring his family back and reconciling his family, bringing unity back, because remember, sin brings division. So again, this is a model for us. Joseph's a great model. Seeking reconciliation. Can you think of something that how many of you have a brother in here? Everybody's, right? Brothers are the best and they're the worst at the same time sometimes, right? I mean, I have 5 of them, I know.
Were the
Two.
kids thrown in jail?
What?
Were any of his brothers thrown in jail?
Yeah, he threw Judah in jail. Well, initially he threw them in jail, right? And then he let them go back. Right? But they had to come back to get the other brother, right? So 2 key lessons we want to take away from Joseph's story. Right? First, God wants our fidelity above all else. We look back over these stories of Genesis 11 or 12 through 50. What's fidelity? Yeah, he wants our faith. To put our faith in him. Look at Abraham and Jacob. When they took matters in their own hand, what happened? When they lacked faith, what happened?
They failed in sin.
They failed in sin, and what was the result of that?
Separation.
What's that?
Separation.
Separation, division within the families, right? So when God is asking for our fidelity, He's asking for our trust. Right? We look at Joseph. Right? He was faithful. Despite all these hardships that he encountered, he remained faithful to God. And of course, what happened through Joseph's story, right? When he trusted in God, God saved all of his people. Again, a reminder to us, right? How many times do we act like Jacob and try and solve and fix things instead of relying on God? And here we see in Joseph, who's humbled and learns to rely on God, that God is able to work and do great things through him. Of course, the second lesson from 11 through 50 or 12 through 50, is sin brings evil consequences. Sin brings about evil consequences. That sin divides. So we've seen that particularly within families, right? And that's our kind of our base relationships is our family. And in Mass this morning, that's what Father Jacobazzi was talking about, was that that's what the devil tries to do, is sow discord and separate people. He doesn't want people coming together in community. What we also see here, though, is even through sin, what can God do?
Make it good.
He can work everything out to our favor. He can turn something bad, something evil, something that looks like a terrible situation, for example, Joseph's story, into something good. And so if we look at the Joseph story, this is a great reminder to us, right? That when things are bad, when things are at their worst, that's when we have to have our most faith. That's when we have to just turn it over to God and say, God, I don't know what's going to happen here. Mr. Garrett, why do you have your iPad out? Some guys, I tell you what, there's the devil being divisive, separating you from our community of believers here.
Come on, Garrett.
Pulling you into that cyber hell.
I think we need to have a baptism.
Should we all lay hands on him?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's exercise.
Josh, come
Yeah.
here.
And may the Lord
Don't mess up his hair, though. Guess we have to get this.
Don't check it out.
and the way. No.
So again,
Thank you.
when things are bad, when things are at their darkest, this is when it takes the most faith, right? Say, God, I don't know what's going to happen here, but I'm going to place my faith and trust in you. I mean, I always think about the idea that after Jesus ascends to heaven, who does he send to take his place here on earth with us?
Holy Spirit.
The Holy Spirit, right? The Holy Spirit has a job. His job is to help us, right? So hey, I need some help. Holy Spirit, let's get busy. Do your job here. Right? So again, I think if we start looking back in our lives as you gain more experiences, you'll see that happening, right? The Holy Spirit at work. I did post the review sheet. The test will be on Tuesday.